A ship limps back into port after a 2-year-long expedition. Their crew has sailed to the far-flung reaches of the globe, visiting the most isolated places on the planet. After such a long time at sea, the ship is being held together by little more than pitch and hope. It used to be held together by iron nails, but the sailors had other uses for them. This is the HMS Dolphin, a 6th-rate frigate capable of carrying 24 cannons. It was commissioned in 1752. Shortly after it launched, Britain entered the 7 Years' War, and the Dolphin was sent to fight. After the war ended, it was used for a different purpose. For centuries, Europeans believed in what is known as the unknown southern land, or Terra Australis incognita, a supposed continent in the southern hemisphere that balanced out the northern hemisphere. Australia was revealed to the Europeans in the 17th century, but there was still a strong belief that there was another landmass somewhere in the huge expanse of the South Pacific. In 1764, the Dolphin was sent out to explore and exploit this uncharted part of the world. Captained by John Byron, the grandfather of the famous poet Lord Byron, the Dolphin set out from Britain across the Atlantic. After a brief stop in Rio de Janeiro and scoping out the Falkland Islands, the ship and crew headed further south to the Strait of Magellan, braving the rough and unpredictable waters at the tip of South America. The Dolphin then entered the Pacific Ocean, where they found a few islands in what is now French Polynesia. No Terra Australis incognita, though. Disappointed, Byron ordered the ship west, reaching what is now Jakarta, Indonesia, for a refit, and then around the Cape of Good Hope of Africa. The Dolphin arrived back in Britain in May of 1766. Though they didn't find a mythical continent, they did return with reports of the animal and plant life found on these islands, as well as the indigenous populations. The Dolphin had completed one of the fastest circumnavigations of the globe, taking less than 2 years to finish the journey. Even though they failed to find any new continent, there was still excitement generated by the Dolphin's voyage, and in August of 1766, the ship, now captained by Samuel Wallis, set out for another voyage. Crossing the Atlantic was uneventful, though the Dolphin was forced to spend 3 months trying to navigate around the tip of South America. Although they fought against heavy winds and rough seas, the crew did manage to map out terrain features of one of the most dangerous parts of the ocean. Finally, in April, they managed to clear the Strait of Magellan and sail into the Pacific Ocean. The ship survived the treacherous waters, but the crew was badly in need of fresh provisions. Captain Wallis turned the Dolphin northwest to a little explored section of the Pacific Ocean, hoping to reach land for provisions. In early June, they spotted islands in the Tua'one archipelago. The crew was able to stock up on some food and fresh water before heading west. On June 18, 1767, more land was spotted, and on the 23rd, the HMS Dolphin dropped anchor in Tahiti, which Wallis named King George's Island. This was a massive relief, as much of the crew, including Wallis, was sick from their months at sea. Of course, they weren't alone. Tahiti had been inhabited by Polynesians who settled the island centuries earlier. When they saw the large British ships sailing in, they hopped in their canoes and paddled out to greet the newcomers. Captain Wallis saw that their canoes held not only the Tahitians, but also pigs, chickens, and fresh fruit, provisions that the crew desperately needed. When they approached the Dolphin, Wallis ordered the ship's gunner and 2 midshipmen to trade for them. In exchange, the British gave the Tahitians beads, knives, and iron nails, and fired cannons if they didn't get their way. On June 24th, according to Wallis's report, the ship was surrounded by hundreds of canoes, which he described as, quote, furnished rather for war than trade. He states that the Tahitians gave a shout and began to converge on the Dolphin, hurling stones as they paddled closer. The British opened fire, and the Tahitians scattered when a cannonball tore one of their canoes in half. Things calmed down after that, and while there was no doubt some tension, friendly relations were soon established. The Tahitians traveled to the Dolphin and traded with the British, and in short order, the ship's holds were refilled with fresh supplies. George Robertson, the ship's master, kept detailed records of these exchanges. Above all, the Tahitians valued iron, especially iron nails, because they couldn't make any yet. Soon, a basic exchange rate was created, with certain goods being worth a specific length of nail. For example, a 3-inch nail was claimed to be worth a 20-pound pig. Provisions weren't the only thing that nails were used for. One day, Robertson was ashore with a group of Liberty men, those who were allowed off the Dolphin. While there, he and the others were approached by 3 Tahitian women who kept making a specific gesture. The Liberty men assured Robertson that the women only wanted an iron nail and didn't elaborate. Confused, Robertson gave them each a nail as a gift before departing. A while later, back on the ship, Robertson told this to the gunner, who explained the Tahitians were engaged in the world's oldest profession, and the price was an iron nail. Over the following weeks, the sailors soon expended the ship's supply of extra nails and started to pull nails from the Dolphin itself, including the nails used to secure the sailors' hammocks and also from the cleats, which were used to secure the ship's ropes in place. According to popular legend, the sailors were so eager for female companionship that they started pulling apart the ship, so the structural integrity was jeopardized. It's a funny story, no doubt, but highly exaggerated. It was reported that the sailors were forced to sleep on the deck rather than in their hammocks, and securing the miles of ropes needed on a sailing ship became that much more difficult. But the Dolphin was still seaworthy. These reports, combined with tales from other explorers of the tropical paradise and the perceived promiscuity of the locals, caused the tale to be exaggerated. On top of this, most of the accounts were written later, especially by Captain Wallis, who was bedridden on the Dolphin during their time in Tahiti, so his accounts were secondhand information told well after the fact, which adds to more confusion. Of course, the accounts don't take into consideration the Tahitian perspective. Rather than simply being an overly promiscuous culture, there's much more involved. The 3 women Robertson and the Liberty men encountered weren't random women, but more than likely followers of a god of war. They would travel around the Tahitian islands performing religious rituals to encourage fertility and prosperity, which did involve sexual acts. However, this was a very select portion of the population. The men had been unknowingly cutting a sacred grove of trees when the women confronted them. They were followers of the god of war, and the British had arrived during one of their seasonal festivals. The Tahitians may have believed that the sailors were somehow associated with their gods and included them in their rituals. With no common language, cultural confusion was inevitable. Structural integrity of the Dolphin aside, there was another issue that was a major cause for concern. Many of the ship's officers were afraid that these activities would lead to an outbreak of venereal disease among the Tahitians. The ship's doctor, however, assured them that the crew was healthy. Unfortunately, when James Cook visited the island in 1769, there was a major syphilis outbreak among the native population, which they blamed on a French expedition that reached the island a year after the Dolphin. Either way, Cook estimated 90% of the Tahitian population was devastated by Western disease. After about a month, the crew of the Dolphin had recovered and the ship's hold was filled with fresh provisions, and in late July, they raised anchor and departed. They continued westward, passing through the Gilbert and Ellis Islands and then the Marianas before navigating the Cape of Good Hope. The Dolphin returned to Britain in May of 1768. By completing this voyage, the HMS Dolphin became the first ship to circumnavigate the planet twice. Although they didn't discover the Terra Australis incognita, they did bring back valuable information about an exotic part of the world. The tale of the Dolphin's crew tearing apart their ship for nails may seem humorous, but it belies a much different reality, one of cultural misinterpretations, exploitation, and the ultimate destruction of a people's way of life.